The ever-welcoming and accepting Canadian nation is divided on the issues of immigration, and here's why. For the past 4 decades, Canada has proudly proclaimed itself to be a nation built by immigrants, as immigrants from all over the world have come here for a better life and contributed to the demographic and economic development of the country. However, recently the sentiments of the Canadian public are not the same toward the growing immigration rates. So what's changed? After the end of the COVID lockdown, Canada has almost doubled its intake of immigrants. Though Canada is a developed economy, such a peak in the immigration rate has made the situation challenging, leading to visible political unrest among different groups. But the big question is, why is the Canadian government still taking in more immigrants? Let us find out.
We are here today because Canada is broken. Our kindness and generosity has given way to naivety and weakness. We do not want to be taken advantage of, tricked, lied to, and sold out by those we trusted to lead us.
As of 2023, 80 million immigrants have moved to Canada and made it their permanent home. This accounts for 20% of Canada's population. This is the highest in the world in proportion to the population. In a census done in 2021, it was found that India is top among the top 10 countries of immigrants coming to Canada, with 898,050 people immigrating to Canada by 2021, followed by the Philippines and China with 719,580 and 715,835. In fourth place is the United States with 464,135 people. It's safe to say that Canada hosts a diverse population and has been hospitable. Still, it cannot be ignored that immigration comes with its challenges. It burdens the country's social services such as housing, school, and healthcare. It's also a demanding step regarding the struggles of maintaining social coherence in a heavily diverse population. This raises the obvious question. What's made Canada let so many people in? Canada is facing an aging population coupled with low fertility rate. The fertility rate of a Canadian woman is 1.5, which is far below the replacement rate of fertility 2.1 and the global average fertility rate, which is 2.3. This has resulted in a shrinking population, leading to labor shortage and fewer younger people for taxing and supporting the elderly population. The easiest way to solve this problem is to invite young people from abroad. Canada has always been pro-immigration. In the 19th century, Canada introduced an open-door policy to populate its rural areas. This policy encouraged white immigrants to settle in Canada. However, by the end of the Second World War, the attitude toward non-Caucasian people somewhat changed, as it marked the end of colonization and many countries gained independence.
At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
The 60s civil rights movement in America further accelerated this change. In 1967, a point-based system of policy was introduced, which allowed skilled workers from all around the world to come and settle in Canada, as merit was the only standard. Moreover, Canada also needed to cultivate some national ideas to set itself apart from other nations. So, with tons of land to spare and little to no one to care for it, multiculturalism became a cornerstone of Canadian national identity. With this new policy, Canada could get cheap labor from underdeveloped countries to support its aging population. This allowed them to have skilled people from around the world without making much investment in their education or other needs. These workers were also willing to take low-pay, blue-collar jobs, which locals were less inclined to grasp. All seems to be a win for Canada. So, what went wrong? Canada is set to welcome 500,000 immigrants by the next 3 years to make up for the labor shortages and low fertility rate. There's a clear disparity in the influx of immigrants to certain provinces and their ability to provide for this growing population. As per stats in 2024, 199,297 immigrants settled in the province of Ontario. It is 3 times the British Columbia, which with 66,268 hosts second highest number of immigrants. Though Canada is facing a shrinking population, this disproportionate immigration is less than ideal. This has resulted in a housing crisis, especially in the metropolitan areas. The prices of houses have gone up multifold in 2 decades. According to Canadian Real Estate Association data, since the pandemic began, some prices have soared about 25% and around 200% in the last 16 years. There has been a steep rise in the demand for residential property, and the supply has not increased to meet this demand. Moreover, due to these inflated gains from the housing property, many corporations have jumped onto this opportunity and started buying more and more property, further exacerbating the crisis. One might speculate, if there's such a high demand for housing, then how come more houses are not being built? 2 aspects come into play. First is the labor mismatch. Second, the inability for the metropolitan hubs to accommodate the rapid increase in population, especially after COVID, leading to forward migration of best-trained professionals from around the world. Though there is a skilled labor shortage, the Canadian market needs more construction workers, doctors, and teachers. Most of the immigrants coming to Canada have the education and skills for managerial positions, while technical skills still fall short. The demand is for carpenters, electricians, and other technical people needed for the construction. Instead, there is an overwhelming supply of business administration professionals. A mismatch between what is in demand in the market and the type of labor available is not helping the ongoing labor shortage. Other in-demand professions are web developers, registered nurses, veterinarians, welders, and truck drivers. These professionals have better opportunities available in the neighborhood. The USA, as Canadian metropolitan hubs, lack the structure to allocate skilled laborers, as settling new people in a community requires time to gradually expand infrastructure. Forward migration of skilled workers to the United States is clearly an issue for Canada. According to the U.S. Census American Community Survey in 2022, 30,000 foreign-born Canadians migrated from Canada to the USA in 2023 in search of better opportunities.
53,000 of those were born in Canada, 46,000 were Americans that were returning home, and 30,000 had immigrated to Canada from somewhere else, and then they chose to leave.
The inflated cost of housing forces people out of Canada. According to a study done by the Institute of Canadian Citizenship, the Leaky Bucket expresses concern about the decreasing capability of Canada to retain its foreign-born citizens. Onward migration rates change throughout the course of immigrants' trajectories in Canada. Most onward migration occurs in the first 10 years after arrival, with the greatest risk of departure occurring between years 4 and 7. This poses a great threat to the prosperity of Canada. The concern is shown by multiple officials. As Canada relies more and more on immigrants to fill acute shortages in key sectors like housing and healthcare, our ability to retain them is becoming a matter of vital national interest, said Daniel Bernhard, CEO of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. Simply put, if Canada cannot deliver for newcomers and help them become Canadian in their passports and their hearts, we may soon be discussing our prosperity in the past tense. Canada's future prosperity depends on immigration, said Stéphane Fournier, Executive Director of the Conference Board of Canada. The influential lobby group Century Initiative swayed the government to increase the population of Canada by 100 million by 2100. They imply this increase, as by growing the population to 100 million by 2100, would reduce the burden on government revenues to fund healthcare, old age security, and other services. It would also mean more skilled workers, innovation, and dynamism in the Canadian economy. But this forward migration, due to the inability to retain immigrants, is proving to be a major setback for Canada, and one of the solutions for this issue is to further increase the intake of immigrants, which then again, in the short run, exacerbates the housing crisis and pressure on the public services, leading to worsening living standards and forward migration. Another tangent in the double-bladed solution to the demographic problem is the international students.
International students.
International students.
International students.
International students.
International students.
Canada's international study permit issuance has surged dramatically over the past decade, with nearly 580,000 new permits granted in 2023, and expectations of demand reaching 1.4 million applications by 2027, driven largely by tuition revenue. According to the PI, Indian students alone spend $2 billion in tuition fees in the province of Ontario. This is more than what the colleges receive from the government. Moreover, according to the CIMM, international students contribute over $22.3 billion per year to the Canadian economy, greater than exports of auto parts, lumber, or aircraft. International graduates are also a source of key talent to help support Canada's future economic growth and counteract the country's aging demographic. Though these international students have been a great support to Canada, Canadian colleges are not able to support this influx.
There are, in provinces, the diploma equivalent of puppy mills that are just churning out diplomas. This is not a legitimate student experience.
There has never been a cap on international students' visas, hence the number of dependents on demand for how many students immigrate to Canada. Most international students migrate out of the country with only a third staying back. Even then, they need housing for the time they're in the country. There is no housing for these students. There are other issues, like fake students, who come here on student visas and then seek asylum. Data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, revealed that asylum claims from study visa holders in Canada nearly tripled from 2018 to 2022. About 15,935 students visa holders in Canada have applied for asylum in that period. The number of asylum seekers per year nearly tripled, raising from 1,835 in 2018 to 4,880 cases in 2022. For good measure, we can see the disparity between demand and supply in the housing market as reference for the rest of these policies. There's only one house available for 4 working adults in 2024, which is less than half as it was one house per 1.8 working adults previously. This back and forth leading to further depletion of public service and living conditions, inflating the cost of housing, has led to anti-immigrant sentiments among Canadians.
We have millions of people moving into Canada who are often settling into Toronto and Vancouver. Why are we bringing in so many people if we know for a fact that we don't have housing for them and they may end up homeless?
On the other hand, many international students who come to Canada with a promise of a better life now suffer failure due to the lack of opportunity, due to the rapid and unaccounted growth in immigration. This discomfort has now increased to the point of active movements and protests, demanding the government to stop immigration. The Take Back Canada movement, most prominent in Toronto, demands a stop to immigration and deportation of fake students. They criticize the government policies, calling them destructive and elite-serving. They blame the government for basing immigration policies on the benefit of the ruling elites, as bringing in the excessive labor to keep the wages low and the housing market out of the common Canadian's approach. Canada is in a place where it can neither cut immigration nor keep it in at the same rate as it is. Though the continuous pressure on the economy and rising public unrest have led the government to tighten the cap on further intake of immigrants, Immigration Minister Mark Miller discloses these measures during a news conference in Ottawa. For 2025, Canada will reduce international students' permits by 10% from this year's levels, maintaining this limit through 2026. This represents a 36% decline from 2023 numbers. Further, the proposed reduction of temporary residents from 6.5% of Canada's total population to 5% will be reflected in the 2025 to 2027 immigration levels plan released by November 1st, 2024.
Today, I am announcing 3 principal measures. 1, a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permit. It is the latest in a series of measures to improve program integrity, set international students up for success in order to maintain a sustainable level of temporary residence in Canada as well. To ensure that there is no further growth in the number of international students in Canada for 2024.
Though this will temporarily relieve the demand for housing and pressure on social services, what will be its long-term impact? especially on the demographic problem. Well, that's a topic for another video. Till then, stay tuned by subscribing to the channel and press the bell icon so you may never miss a notification, and like this video. It helps the channel. Thank you so much for watching.